SABC, host broadcaster of the G20 South Africa 2025.
Well, Deputy President Paul Mashatile will this morning address delegates attending the G20 Social Summit at the Birchwood Hotel at the OR Tambo Conference Center in Ekurhuleni. Now, this flagship event will take place starting today until Thursday. Now, it's a platform for integrating civil society voices into the G20 decision-making process, also seeking to foster global solidarity, advance inclusive development, and deliver a declaration that reflects the aspirations and lived realities of citizens, especially the most vulnerable. For more, let's talk now to Leanne, who is, of course, at Birchwood for us, to tell us more and speak to some of the delegates in attendance there. Leanne?
Sakina, thanks very much. Yes, indeed. It's so nice to see some of the delegates start arriving for a long 3 days ahead, a lot of deliberations. Well, I'm going to get straight into my interview with our first guest that's here. It's Princess Nikiwe Bam. She is a respected member of the Afrikan Indigenous Leaders organization, also serves as a facilitator in the working group on cultural diversity recognition and embracement. Princess, thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much, Leanne. Good morning to the viewers at home.
This is a big moment in South Africa's history. It certainly is a moment for the African continent as well. From your perspective, the significance of this and the social summit?
This summit is bringing together the governments, the ministers, the business people, and also the civil society. What is most important is that we are included in this and our voices matter. Because throughout the process of the C20, we have brought together voices, Pan-African voices, voices from the continent, not just in South Africa only. And that is what now we are coming on to this social summit to actually meet up now with the governments and also make those declarations and discussions based on what we understand is happening in our communities.
I think it's important for us to also just pause for a moment and actually look at the role of traditional leaders. What role do they have in shaping the future of something like a G20 Leaders Summit? What advice would you like to carry into that summit?
The traditional leaders are really visible in this process. They are here. I have met most of them as they arrived. And I just want to encourage them to actually stand up for their communities, because everything that is being discussed is affecting them and their people. You talk about poverty, you talk about health issues, you talk about mental health, you talk about climate disasters and all these things. These are all issues that affect people that are under the jurisdiction of our traditional leaders. So we want them to be more engaged, not just to come as ceremonial or just to be visible, but to be engaging and making decisions and be part of the discussions of the G20.
And that for me is probably one of the most important issues, because there's a lot of criticism, and one of the biggest criticisms of global forums is that rural grassroots communities are always left behind. And, you know, you close doors, men in suits discussing the future of the world, and the rest are locked out. This social summit, how are we planning on changing that narrative?
In this social summit, like I've mentioned, there are people coming from different provinces, from different countries. They are here. Traditional leaders are here. It's just that sometimes they don't get aware of what content they must bring in. But there have been built up events that have actually conscientized them to say, look, you are going there. We need land. We need our mineral resources. We need finance. We need finance on climate change to sort out issues. So the traditional leaders, they are there, and they are landowners. They are also the voice of the people. We cannot have any government without the civil society. We vote for the leaders that are our presidents today. So anything or any discussion that is happening, it must include those voices of these people. And that is why I think most of the events that have been happening, we have emphasized their inclusion, and also that they must be part of the round table. They must be part of the decisions and policy frameworks that we are going to be discussing today.
The themes South Africa have put on the table, food security, inequality, disaster resilience, and climate justice. Those are the big ones. Okay, yes. I know that you would have, I suppose, your priorities of what affects rural communities the most. what would you emphasize if you had to choose one of those? Because I would add youth unemployment into that, because if you look in rural areas, that's a major problem. Which is the biggest one you would like to see tackled?
I'm currently on the thematic area 3, which deals with the justice for climate change inclusion and also just energy transitions. So what we have been advocating for is the inclusion of indigenous knowledge systems and traditional strategies to actually look into climate change. Because sometimes we find that we just talk technical, but most of the people affected by energy, by disasters, are also part of the people that have also knowledge that they should be bringing on board and integrated into other knowledge systems that are there, so that those people that are knowledgeable in terms of their indigenous knowledge. And also we have also emphasized the issue of spirituality, because when you talk of climate change and disasters, people always look into maybe it's pollution and that, but some of these things are spiritual, and it's how as Black people relate to nature and relate to the rivers and the oceans and to the environment as a whole.
And this being a global summit, you know, I imagine throughout the world you find similarities of different cultures, different traditions that believe in the same things that we are speaking about right now, especially with this being a massive global platform as we talk about G20 as the grouping that is coming together, as well as other invited guests, and particularly those emphasized on the African continent. You're sitting on a working group, and this working group is focused on cultural recognition and embracement. My question to you is, how does the recognition of cultural diversity strengthen development? How do we find that social cohesion and, most importantly, policy responses to all of this?
Yes, you are correct to say that this has been global. We do have indigenous people in other countries, even in the US, in the Caribbean, people in the diaspora that have been included in this. And of course, people look into what we're doing, culture, as something that has to do with us being dressed up, heritage and all. But culture is very deep, because this involves the IKS economies, the well-being economies. It involves everything that we are living in. Across the working groups, we have actually included that voice of those people, that recognition that as people will talk about artificial intelligence, indigenous knowledge systems must be there. You talk about climate change, all of these things must. You talk about the economy. Some of the people think that economy is maybe manufacturing of cars only, but even manufacturing of medicine, health issues, we address those using this knowledge, and we want that integration. So these are all things that lead to development. If we actually get finance to have our own infrastructures for medical herbs, for our plants, for our biodiversity, for protection, for IP, for coding, our knowledge. So those are all the things that we have been calling for, because we cannot rely on other countries for our own things, that our own knowledge and our own skills. So, but we normally recognize medicine that comes from different countries, even though it's herbs that are taken from our country as well. So these are things that we are looking into, because we are looking at many things that can create jobs. Even on creative industries, crafting, those are the voices that we have not heard much of, even in my working group. But there are women in rural areas that are doing those things. There are young people who are talented to actually be able to use their talents to make income.
Absolutely, and the talent you speak about is unprecedented when you look at some of these incredible individuals that are going to be here. There's also places for them to showcase what it is that they do. But most importantly is we don't want this to just be conversations, and I imagine you feel exactly the same way. Princess Nikiwe Bam, these are important issues that are going to be discussed, and I think you're getting a bit of a sense of what we're talking about here, because, you know, we speak finance ministers, we talk all of the economics and all of these kind of things that are now, I suppose, being shifted and perhaps even put into a bit of an uncomfortable zone as social and civil society get to have their voice in all of this. All right, that's where we'll leave it for now. We'll have more for you a little bit later on. Let me hand it back to Johannesburg Studios.
SABC, host broadcaster of the G20 South Africa 2025.